All right, we are diving into a really fascinating new study today, one that tackles a huge question on everyone's mind. What is generative AI actually doing to our creativity?
You've probably wondered about this yourself, right? Whether you're an artist, a writer, or just someone who uses these tools. Are they helping us break new ground? Or are they quietly making all of our ideas, well, kind of the same? That's the big question we're going to dig into.
The researchers behind this study framed the debate with two brilliant analogies. Is AI a creative springboard that helps us jump over writer's block and find totally new paths? Or is it a creative anchor, something that weighs us down and keeps our thinking tied too closely to its own suggestions? So, which one is it?
Well, to find out, these scientists didn't just guess. Nope, they set up a really clever experiment to get some actual hard evidence. Let's break down how they did it.
So here's the basic setup. They got nearly 300 people to be their writers. The job? Just write a simple 8-sentence story. Then, in a totally separate phase, a much bigger group of 600 evaluators would come in and rate those stories for things like creativity.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. They split the writers into 3 groups. You had your control group, just a person and a blank page. Then you had 2 other groups who could get help from GPT-4. One could ask for a single story idea, and the other could ask for up to 5. And get this, of the people who were offered AI help, almost 90% took it. That's a wild statistic right there. Okay, this next part is absolutely crucial. The 600 people who were rating all these stories, they were flying blind. They had no idea which stories were written by humans alone and which ones had AI help. This is so important because it means there's no bias. The ratings are purely about the stories themselves.
So, the stories are written, the ratings are all in. What did they find? Well, the first result was pretty stunning, and it looked like a massive win for AI.
Let's look at the numbers. The stories from the group that had access to 5 AI ideas, they were rated as 8.1% more novel, which just means more original, more unique, than the stories written by just humans. That's a really significant creative jump.
And it wasn't just that the stories were weirder. They were also rated 9% higher on usefulness. Now, what does that mean? It means things like, is this a well-formed idea? Or could this be developed into a real book? So the ideas weren't just more original, they were actually better.
And the good news for AI just kept on coming. The evaluators said the AI-assisted stories were better written, more enjoyable to read, and less boring. They were even more likely to have a cool plot twist. It really seemed like AI was the ultimate creative partner. So you might think, okay, case closed, AI makes people more creative. But when the researchers dug a little deeper, they found a really fascinating pattern in who was getting the biggest creativity boost. This chart just shows it perfectly. See that red line? That's the writers who used AI. And look what happens over on the left side of the chart. For the writers who were initially less creative, the AI gave them this massive lift, bringing their scores right up to the same level as the most creative writers. It literally closed the creativity gap. So it seems like a total victory, right? AI boosts creativity, it helps those who need it most, it levels the playing field. But this is where the story takes a much more complicated and, honestly, a much more interesting turn. I mean, based on everything we've just seen, you'd think the debate is settled. AI is a creative springboard. End of story, right? Well, not so fast. And here is the twist. The researchers stopped looking at the stories one by one and started looking at them as a whole collection. This graph shows the variety. That wide spread out black curve, that's the human-only stories. You can see there's a ton of diversity there. But the blue and red curves for the AI groups are way taller and narrower. That means that while each individual story got better, the whole collection of stories started to look a lot more similar to each other.
And the reason why is pretty clear. When you looked at the final stories people wrote, they were very, very similar to the initial ideas the AI gave them. And that is the creative anchor we talked about at the beginning. The AI suggestions were helpful, yeah, but they also reined people in, keeping them close to the starting point.
The authors of the study summed it up perfectly. It's a social dilemma. Any single writer is better off using AI, you're going to produce a better story, but if everyone does it, the collective result is that we produce a much narrower, less varied range of ideas.
So this leaves us with a really profound paradox. What in the world does this mean for the future of creativity?
It all comes down to this idea, the social dilemma of AI creativity.
It's this weird situation where what's good for the individual creator, making a better, more polished piece of work, might actually be bad for our culture as a whole, if it leads to a world where all our stories and songs and art start to feel the same.
So let's just recap the big takeaways here. Yes, AI can absolutely be a springboard. It can boost an individual's creativity, and it's an amazing tool for leveling the playing field. But, and this is a really big but, it also acts as an anchor. Widespread use could make our whole creative culture more homogeneous. You could say AI helps us write better individual stories, but it might just lead to a much less interesting library overall.
And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. This technology is only getting more powerful and more woven into everything we do. So how do we balance this? How do we use its incredible power to help ourselves create without sacrificing the diversity and the beautiful weirdness that makes our collective culture so vibrant and interesting in the first place? That's the dilemma we all have to figure out now.